The air in the garage was thick, heavy with the scent of motor oil, old leather, and a faint, lingering hint of my father's favorite peppermint gum. It was a smell that usually made me feel safe, but today it felt like a weight on my chest. In the center of the room, sitting under a dusty gray silk tarp, was the Midnight Stallion, a 1967 Ford Mustang fastback. My father, Robert, had spent the last 15 years of his life pouring every spare cent and every weekend into this machine. It wasn't just a car, it was a diary of his hard work, his patience, and his obsession. I pulled the tarp back just enough to see the chrome bumper. It sparkled even in the dim light. I remember being 10 years old, holding the flashlight for him while he cursed at a stubborn bolt. He used to say, "Ethan, a car like this isn't owned, it's earned. You respect the machine, and it'll respect you." He died 3 weeks ago, a sudden heart attack at the kitchen table. And ever since the funeral, the house had felt like a battlefield. The heavy, heavy sound of footsteps echoing on the concrete floor told me I wasn't alone. I didn't even have to look up to know it was Tyler, my stepbrother. Tyler was 3 years younger than me, the son of my father's second wife, Linda. While I had grease under my fingernails from helping Dad, Tyler usually had a game controller in his hand, or a drink he was too young to be having. "She looks lonely in here, doesn't she?" Tyler's voice was oily, sliding into the silence. I didn't look at him. I just kept rubbing a smudge off the hood. "She's fine, Tyler." "You know," Tyler said, walking around the car and trailing a finger through the light dust on the paint. "Dad and I had a talk about a month ago, down at the diner. He told me he was worried about my future. He said, 'Tyler, I want you to have something that represents freedom, something that shows you've grown up.' He promised me this car, Ethan." I stopped rubbing the hood. My hand stayed still. "That's funny, Tyler, because Dad left a very specific, very legal will. And in that will, the car is registered in my name, along with the house." Tyler's face shifted. The cool brother mask slipped for a second, revealing something sharp and desperate. "A will is just paper, man. Dad knew you were the responsible one. You already have a career, you have your life together. He wanted me to have this because he knew I'd actually live in it. You'll just let it rot in here like a museum piece." "I'm not letting it rot," I said, my voice low. "I'm protecting it." "From what?" Tyler laughed, but it sounded forced. "From his own family? Look, Ethan, let's be real. I'm struggling. I've got things to take care of. Selling my old sedan would cover it. If I have the Mustang, I can start over. It's what Dad would have wanted. He always looked out for the underdog." I finally looked at him. Tyler looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes that hadn't been there a month ago. He wasn't talking about freedom or driving into the sunset. He was looking at the Mustang like a man looks at a winning lottery ticket. "The answer is no, Tyler," I said firmly. He didn't argue further, but the way he slammed the garage door on his way out told me this was just the beginning. Later that night, I sat in my father's study, going through his bank statements. I was trying to find closure, but instead, I found a nightmare. My father had been an organized man, but the last 6 months of his records were a mess. There were large withdrawals, 2,000 here, 5,000 there. Then, I found a crumpled note in the back of his desk drawer. It wasn't in my father's handwriting. It was a list of numbers, a phone number for a debt consolidation service, and a name I didn't recognize written in bold. Marcus. My stomach dropped. I realized then that Tyler's promise wasn't about a sentimental gift from a father to a son. It was a lie built to cover a hole he had dug for himself. And now that Dad was gone, Tyler expected me to throw the Midnight Stallion into that hole, to fill it up. I looked out the window at the garage. The light was off, but I could still see the silhouette of the car through the window. I had a choice to make. I could be the good brother and give in, or I could be the son my father raised and protect the only thing he had left. I picked up my phone and started drafting a post on a forum I'd followed for years. AITA for refusing to give my late father's classic car to my stepbrother, even though he claims it was promised to him. As I typed, I knew the drama was only just beginning. Linda would be at my door by morning, and Tyler wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted, or until I made sure he never could. The next morning didn't start with the smell of coffee. It started with the sound of a vacuum cleaner banging against my bedroom door. It was Linda's way of saying, "Wake up, We need to talk. When I finally walked into the kitchen, the atmosphere was thick enough to choke on. Linda, my stepmother, was standing by the stove, moving a spatula around a pan with aggressive precision. Tyler was sitting at the breakfast nook, staring intently at his phone, though I could tell he wasn't actually reading anything. "Morning," I muttered, reaching for a mug. "We need to talk about the Mustang, Ethan," Linda said, skipping the pleasantries. She turned around, leaning against the counter. Her eyes were red-rimmed, a mix of genuine grief for my father, and a sharp, defensive edge for her own son. "I told Tyler my answer yesterday, Linda," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "The car stays in the garage. I'm planning on getting the engine professionally tuned next month." Linda let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Tuned? Ethan, look at this house. Look at us. Your father is gone. We are trying to figure out how to move forward, and you're worried about spark plugs? Tyler is in a very difficult position." I leaned back against the fridge. "How difficult exactly?" "Because I saw Dad's bank statements. I saw the cash withdrawals. Was he paying off Tyler's debts while he was alive?" The kitchen went dead silent. Tyler finally looked up from his phone, his face flushing a deep, guilty crimson. "That's none of your business," Tyler spat. "Dad helped me out because he cared. He knew I had a bad run with some investments." "Investments? Is that what we're calling the underground poker games at the warehouse district now?" I countered. "Tyler, I'm not an idiot. I found the notes in Dad's desk. You didn't just have a bad run, you bled him dry for months, and now that the ATM is closed, you want the car to sell to Marcus, don't you?" Linda stepped forward, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "Ethan, please, those people, they aren't like us. They don't send polite letters in the mail. They've been calling the house, they've been driving past. They think Tyler has the money because they know about Bob's estate." "So your solution is to sell the one thing Dad loved more than anything?" I asked, my voice rising. "The car he spent 15 years building, you want to hand that over to some low-life collector or a chop shop, just so Tyler can go back to the tables next week?" "It's just a car," Linda shouted, her composure finally breaking. "It's a piece of metal, Ethan. My son's safety is worth more than a vintage Ford. If you don't give him the title, you're basically saying you don't care if something happens to him." I felt a coldness settle in my chest. It was the classic trap, the responsible son being made to feel like a villain for not cleaning up the messy son's mistakes. "I'm going for a drive," I said, grabbing my jacket. "Not in the Mustang. In my car. Don't touch the garage door, Tyler. I changed the keypad code this morning." As I walked out, I heard Tyler throw a chair across the kitchen. The sound echoed in the driveway, a violent reminder of how quickly my family was unraveling. I drove aimlessly for an hour, eventually pulling into the parking lot of a local park. I opened my phone and checked the Reddit thread I had started. It had exploded. User 442, NTA, if you give him the car, it's gone. If you don't give him the car, he learns a lesson. Don't let them guilt trip you. Classic Car Guy 88, that Mustang is a work of art. Selling it to pay off gambling debts is a sin. Keep it locked up, OP. Truth Seeker, YTA, it's just a car. If your brother is in actual danger, how can you look at a vehicle and think it's more important? Help your family. I scrolled through the comments, my mind racing. The Truth Seeker comments stung, because deep down, I wasn't a monster. I didn't want Tyler to get hurt. But I also knew Tyler. If I gave him the car today, he'd owe someone else twice as much by Christmas. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Hey, Ethan. Heard you're holding on to Bob's Mustang. Beautiful ride. Tyler owes us 40 grand. It would be a shame if that car or that house met with an accident. Let's talk soon." My heart hammered against my ribs. It wasn't just Tyler's problem anymore. They were coming for me too. They knew my name. They knew about the car. I realized then that keeping the car in the garage was no longer an option. It was a target. If I kept it, the house might actually burn down. If I gave it to Tyler, I was rewarding his destruction of my father's legacy. I needed a third option. I needed a way to get the car out of the equation entirely, while ensuring the money went exactly where it was supposed to, and nowhere near Tyler's pockets. I pulled out of the park and headed toward a very specific address. The showroom of Mr. Henderson, the most prestigious classic car broker in the state. If I was going to sell my father's soul, I was going to do it on my terms. And I was going to make sure the fallout changed Tyler's life forever, whether he liked it or not. The showroom of Henderson's Classic Autos was a cathedral of glass and steel. Inside, the air was climate-controlled to a perfect 70 degrees, preserving the paint and rubber of cars that cost more than the average suburban home. Mr. Henderson was a man who looked like he was carved out of old mahogany, expensive, polished, and very firm. He had known my father for years. They used to swap stories about sourcing rare gaskets and the perfect shade of Wimbledon white paint. "Ethan," Henderson said, greeting me with a handshake that felt like a vice. "I heard about Bob, a tragedy. He was one of the good ones. He actually understood the soul of these machines." "Thanks, Bill," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I'm here about the Midnight Stallion. I need to move it. Fast." Henderson raised an eyebrow. "Move it? Your father wouldn't have sold that car for all the gold in Fort Knox. What changed?" "Life," I said simply, "and safety. I need a valuation, Bill, a real one. Not a friend price, but this is a pristine, one-owner restoration price." As we walked into his private office, I felt like a traitor. Every step away from my father's garage felt like a step toward erasing him. But as I looked at the text message on my phone, the threat from Marcus, I knew I didn't have the luxury of sentimentality. The market for a '67 fastback in that condition, in this economy? Henderson tapped a pen against his desk. "If it's as clean as the last time I saw it, you're looking at $120,000 to $140,000 at auction. But if you want a private sale today, I have a collector in California who has been hunting that specific car for 5 years. He'd wire $130,000 within the hour. $130,000. It was enough to pay off Tyler's debt 3 times over. It was enough to pay off the rest of the mortgage on the house. It was enough to change everything. Do it," I said. "But there are conditions. I need the paperwork drawn up so the funds are split into 3 specific accounts. And I need the car picked up tonight, from a neutral location, not the house." When I got back home, the atmosphere had shifted from Cold War to all-out invasion. Linda was in the living room, surrounded by old photo albums. She was crying, but it felt performative, like she was rehearsing for a role. Tyler was in the kitchen, loudly talking on the phone about collateral and family agreements. "Ethan, thank God you're back," Linda said, wiping her eyes. "I've been thinking, maybe we don't have to sell the whole car. Maybe we can take out a title loan. We keep the car, Tyler gets his investment money back, and we pay it off together." I looked at her, and for a moment, I saw the woman who had made my father happy for 10 years. But behind her, I saw Tyler smearing a greasy thumbprint on the kitchen counter, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. He wasn't a business owner in trouble. He was a bottomless pit. "The car is gone, Linda," I said. The room went silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to stop. "What do you mean, gone?" Tyler walked into the living room, his phone still in his hand. "I sold it," I lied. Well, half-lied. The deal was signed, even if the car was still in the garage. The buyer is picking it up tonight, from the storage unit I moved it to this morning. Tyler's face went from pale to a terrifying bruised purple. "You did what? You had no right. That car was promised to me. You stole my future." He lunged at me, his hands grabbing the collar of my jacket. He was stronger than he looked, fueled by a mix of desperation and adrenaline. "Where's the money, Ethan? Give me the check, now." "There is no check for you, Tyler," I shouted, shoving him back. He stumbled against the coffee table, sending the photo albums flying. "The money is in a locked trust. It's for Mom's retirement and the house taxes, and a portion of it is held in a legal escrow. It can only be released directly to licensed creditors." "Creditors?" Tyler screamed. "I don't have creditors. I have friends." "You have bookies, Tyler. I'm not an idiot. I'm paying off your $40,000 debt to Marcus, directly. I'm not giving you a cent to go back to the tables. You're out of debt, but you're also out of an inheritance. You just traded a $130,000 legacy for a $40,000 mistake." Linda gasped, looking at Tyler. 40,000. Tyler, you told me it was 10. Tyler ignored her, his eyes fixed on me with pure, unadulterated hatred. You think you're so smart? You think you're the hero? You just sold Dad's heart to win an argument. You're the real monster here, Ethan. At least I wanted to keep the car in the family. You just wanted the power. He turned and stormed out of the house, the tires of his old sedan screeching as he tore down the driveway. Linda sat on the sofa, her head in her hands, sobbing quietly. I stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by scattered photos of my father. I had saved the family from financial ruin. I had saved Tyler from whatever Marcus had planned. But as I looked at the empty space on the wall where the car keys used to hang, I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like I had just buried my father for the second time. The Midnight Stallion was going to California. My stepmother was broken. And all I had left was a bank notification on my phone and a garage that was finally, hauntingly empty. The house was too quiet. After the storm of Tyler's departure and Linda's retreat into her bedroom, the silence felt physical. I sat on the floor of the living room, picking up the scattered photographs. There was one of Dad and me at my high school graduation, another of him, Linda, and a young Tyler at a 4th of July barbecue. We looked like a normal family. We looked happy. I pulled out my phone. The Reddit post had gone viral. Thousands of people were weighing in on my life. Ghostwriter99. NTA. You didn't just sell a car, you bought your brother's life. He's too entitled to see it now, but you saved him from a shallow grave. Cargirl TX. I'm crying. That Mustang was his soul. Is there no other way? Once it's gone forever. You can't buy back memories. Legal Eagle. Smart move with the escrow. Giving a gambling addict cash is like giving a pyromaniac a gallon of gasoline. You did the right thing, OP. I wanted to believe Legal Eagle, but Cargirl TX was the one echoing in my head. Once it's gone, it's gone. Around 10 p.m., a low rumble sounded in the driveway. It wasn't the screech of Tyler's beat-up sedan, it was the professional hum of a heavy-duty transport truck. Mr. Henderson's team had arrived. I walked out into the cool night air. The driver, a soft-spoken man named Elias, nodded to me. Ready to load her up, Mr. Miller? Yeah, I whispered. Give me a minute. I walked into the garage one last time. I sat in the driver's seat of the Mustang. The leather creaked under my weight. I gripped the steering wheel, the same wheel my father's hands had polished for hundreds of hours. I turned the key just once. The engine roared to life, a deep guttural growl that shook the very foundation of the garage. It sounded like a heartbeat. As I backed the car out and watched Elias winch it onto the flatbed, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I wasn't just losing a car, I was losing the last physical connection to my father's voice. Just as the truck was about to pull away, I noticed something on the workbench. It was a small, grease-stained envelope I had missed before. My name was written on it in my father's shaky late-stage handwriting. For Ethan. Open when the garage is empty. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a single key, not to a car but to a small safety deposit box at the local bank, and a short note. Ethan, if you're reading this, it means you've had to make a hard choice. I knew Tyler's struggles. I tried to help, but I knew I was only delaying the inevitable. I left you the Mustang because I knew you were the only one who would know when it was time to let go. The car was a joy, but it's just metal. People are what matter. Don't hate Tyler. He's lost, like I was once. There is a second project in the safety box. Use it to build something that lasts. I stared at the note. My father hadn't been blind. He knew exactly what Tyler was doing. He hadn't promised Tyler the car. He had entrusted me with the burden of deciding its fate. He had given me permission to sell it all along. The truck disappeared around the corner, the red taillights fading into the darkness. The Midnight Stallion was gone. I went back inside to find Linda standing in the hallway, looking like a ghost. He called, she said softly. Tyler? He's at a motel. He says he's never coming back. He says you robbed him. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. Did you really pay Marcus? Is it really over? The wire transfer was confirmed an hour ago, Linda. Marcus is out of our lives. Tyler is safe. But he hates you, she whispered. I know, I said, feeling the weight of the key in my pocket. But he's alive to hate me. That's more than he would have been if I'd given him the car. I went to my room, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about the second project my father mentioned. The car was gone, the debt was paid, and my family was shattered. I had won the battle, but as I looked at the empty garage through my window, I realized I was standing in the middle of a graveyard. Tomorrow, I would go to the bank. Tomorrow, I would find out what Dad's final lesson was. But tonight, I just sat in the bark, wondering if being the responsible one was worth the loneliness that came with it. The local bank felt like a tomb on a Tuesday morning. I sat in a small windowless room, the safety deposit box resting on the table before me. My father's note felt like a heavy weight in my pocket. I turned the key, the metallic click echoing against the walls. Inside wasn't gold or more cash. It was a thick, leather-bound ledger and a deed. The ledger was filled with my father's handwriting, but it wasn't about cars. It was a business plan for Miller's Restoration and Youth Center. The deed was for a small, dilapidated warehouse on the edge of town, the place where Dad had started his first mechanic shop 40 years ago. There was one last sticky note attached to the deed. Ethan, money disappears, tools don't. Tyler doesn't need a payout, he needs a purpose. If you have the strength to forgive him, give him a job. Not a handout, a wrench. I sat back, stunned. My father hadn't just planned for the end, he had planned for a new beginning. He knew that the only way to save Tyler wasn't to pay his debts, but to change his life. I spent the next 3 days tracking Tyler down. I found him in a grim $40 a night motel outside the city limits. He looked terrible, unshaven, smelling of stale smoke, and defeated. When he opened the door and saw me, he tried to slam it, but I caught it with my boot. Go away, Ethan, he growled. You got what you wanted. You're the king of the castle now. I don't want a castle, Tyler, I said, handing him the leather-bound ledger. I want a partner. He looked at the book suspiciously, but curiosity won out. He flipped through the pages, his eyes widening as he saw the sketches, the business models, and the deed. The warehouse? Tyler whispered. Dad still owned that? Both of us. I lied slightly. The deed was in my name, but the intent was clear. I have the capital from the Mustang sale. It's enough to renovate the shop and buy the first 3 salvage projects. I'll handle the books and the business side. You're the best mechanic I know when you're actually trying. Dad knew that too. Tyler looked up, his eyes glassy. You sold his car, and you're offering the money to me, after everything I said? I'm not giving you money, Tyler. I'm offering you 12-hour workdays, grease-stained shirts, and a chance to build a legacy that Marcus or any other bookie can't touch. We'll pay off your mistakes with sweat, not just cash. For the first time in years, the arrogance in Tyler's shoulders collapsed. He didn't say anything. He just leaned against the doorframe and put his head in his hands. 6 months later, the air in the new shop smelled like the old garage, engine oil and fresh paint, but there was a new sound, the rhythmic clanking of tools and the hum of a ventilation system. The Miller & Son sign was hanging over the door. In the center of the shop sat a rusted, beat-up 1969 Chevy Camaro. It was our first official project. Tyler was under the lift, his face covered in grease, arguing with a bolt. He was sober, he was tired, and for the first time in his life, he looked proud. Linda sat in the small glass-walled office, managing the appointments and smiling as she watched her 2 sons work together. I sat in the office, finishing the final update on my Reddit thread. Update. I sold the car. My family hated me. I thought I had destroyed my father's legacy to save a brother who didn't want to be saved. But I realized that a legacy isn't something you park in a garage and polish. It's something you use to build a bridge. Tyler and I haven't fixed everything yet. There are still days we don't speak. But we're turning wrenches on the same car now. And I think Dad would like the sound of that more than any engine roar. I hit post and closed my laptop. I walked out into the shop and tossed a clean rag to Tyler. Hey, I called out over the sound of the radio. You think we can get the engine mounted by Friday? Tyler wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the Camaro, then at me. He gave a small, genuine nod. Yeah, if we work through the night. Then let's get to work, I said. The midnight stallion was gone, but the Miller family was finally back on the road. And this time, we were driving together.